Praise the Lord, saints of the Most High God. This is Elder Adrian Heyman coming to you with another in a series of lessons in our study of Revelation. Currently, we're on the church of the Laodiceans. And it's interesting, I did not realize that when addressing the churches, the only one that was addressed not in the way of the city which the church was situated in, but as the people themselves. Like, it didn't say the Ephesians, it didn't say the Smyrnans, didn't say the Thyatirans or the Philadelphians. But it does say the Laodiceans. And what we have discovered is in this particular church, the Lord starts with the ringing indictment against them, that they are of such utter distaste in his mouth. They're not a sweet savor in terms of a sacrifice unto the Lord, but it was of such nastiness, such of a, almost like a retching. You have to vomit it out. At the very least, it's so disgusting, you have to spit it out. And that's exactly how Jesus has thought of this Laodicean church. That they were so distasteful in him that he has threatened to spit them out like you do any trash, any nasty and disagreeable substance. That can be even worse than the declaration of Sardis as a dead church. But remember, it is Sardis and Laodicea that gives you the prospect of both churches not having anything good for the Lord to say about them. Now I'm going to read verse 17, but I'm going to take my time with it. I'm going to split it because it should be understandable of what this church or why the Lord feels this way about this particular church. We need to stay on that. And if we're like this, then we have to change our ways, saints of God. We have to change the way that we do things. We have to change our relationship before God, because we don't want God to do it to us, to spit you out, to spit us out. We don't want that. Verse 17 says, because thou sayest, I am rich. Didn't Jesus say that it will be more difficult for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven? Now, you can take that either literally, which would be is well nigh impossible, or you have to understand at the time they had a gate into the city and they called it the eye of the needle. And the camels would have to unload everything they had and crawl through the gate. So crawling means humility, and you're unloading everything that you have, your riches. So that even fits. If you don't bow unto God and you don't unload the riches that are directing your life, then you will be in a position that God rejects you. I am rich. Doesn't mean everybody that's rich is going to go to hell. Remember, it's not money that's the root of all evil, but it's the love of money. And there are Christians who actually have funds. They've done well in the business industry. They've done well in business, and they've accumulated funds. And to them, I say, well, thank God for you. But don't let your money dictate your relationship with God. And if you have to let go of some of that money, if not most of it, God may, I'm not saying he will, but he may impress upon your heart to do so. You have to be willing to do that. The young man who came to Christ asking sincerely, what must I do that I may enter into heaven? And Christ finally told him, sell all you have, give to the poor, then come, take up your cross and follow me. That young man couldn't do it because the riches have grabbed a hold of him. Doesn't mean he was a bad person, but he could not stand not having his money or prestige or power or any of that. So that becomes a stumbling block to those who are rich. And again, it's not just the fact that they're rich, but I'm going to go a little bit further. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods. I got everything I want. Why would I need God to help me with this when I can buy everything I want? I got my cars, I got my boats, I got my planes, I got my jewelry, I got my houses, I got my furniture. I got money in order to pay off politicians. I got all this various stuff. I can do this with my own money. I. That's what it turns out. Because of me, I did this. Not the Lord blessed me to have these riches, because they're not really mine, they're his. But no, it's my money, my house, my businesses, my cars, my boats, my planes. I can do whatever I want to do. But this last particular phrase is what really indicts them. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing. What you believe, that's for the poor folks. They got to hang upon Christ because they don't know any better. That's how some people think, that they're with Christ because and that's why they push the Bible and they think of it as it helps to keep people down. The Bible helps to keep people down. Because if you're poor, you cry upon God. You depend upon God. You depend upon a crutch. You depend upon help from the Lord because you're poor and you don't have anything. So it keeps you down. But me, I have enough money that I can live many times over with this. Even a loss in my business for 4 or 5 years won't faze me a bit. I have so much money. I can move my businesses around if need be. I can go to various places. I can help change the economy of entire countries. Remember, we have in our country people whose worth is more than the gross domestic product of most of the nations of this world. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that these people are now worth. Hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're starting to get to a point where we have to even think of, my Lord, the first $1 trillion person. You can't even fathom that. And you may say, well, won't the Lord care? Well, that's part of the last days. And I will also bring this as a sign as well. Disparity of wealth. That's also a sign of the last days. And it hasn't been more disparate. The gulf hasn't been more wide than it is today. There are people who can't even afford a house, that live on the street, that dig in the trash cans, use the restroom on the sidewalk because they have no place to go. They cannot take baths. They're at the mercy of the elements. Why is there so many people in California that's homeless? A lot of them came from other places in this country because it doesn't get that cold in California. In New York, they would be freezing to death. In Minnesota, they would be freezing to death. Right now, even in Washington, D.C., they would be freezing to death. And in the summer, oh, try to be in Phoenix in the heat of summer. How many people would be in a cardboard box in the heat of summer? I'm sure that Phoenix has a lot of people that die while they're on the street. But in comparison to those, then there's the person who, they don't worry about where to stay. They got places, mansions in different areas of the world. They have people to maintain their cars, to maintain their boat that they can then take out on a luxury cruise. Now remember also, us going on a cruise, my wife and I, not a luxury cruise, but a cruise. And it was kind of disheartening. You see the places where we landed, and we took tours around the towns of that area. And you see these shanty towns, towns that were made up of corrugated metal, leaned up one against the other. The houses, maybe the windows are broken, but there are people living in there. And then you come back home and you have houses made up of wood and stucco and plaster, and it covers you. You got double pane windows to keep the cold out. You have air conditioning that can start working with you to keep the heat at a reasonable level. All these things we have, and we don't thank God for what we have. And we don't feel some type of pity, some type of, Lord, can we help these people? Maybe they are so used to it that they don't mind it, because they go off, they go to work, they do whatever they need to do. But the fact that there is, that those that are rich, those that have a lot, don't tend to need anything from God. And that's why it's so hard for a rich man to enter to the kingdom of heaven. Story about the Laodiceans. You may read in their history that the whole area was rocked by a strong earthquake. The Philadelphians were devastated by that earthquake. And it appears that they hadn't fully recovered by the time the letters were written by John as dictated to him by Christ Jesus. That these were people who essentially had a little strength, because much of their wealth, if they had any, was destroyed in the earthquake. Laodicea was a different animal entirely. Because Laodicea, there were some areas that the government, the Roman government, the area government, would send funds or send help to help the people to rebuild from such a disaster. You can equate it to us receiving FEMA funds for various disasters, earthquakes, wildfires, flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, and the like that causes widespread damage. Then we need a little bit of extra to help us get back on our feet. So hopefully FEMA's there. I'm not saying that's going to be the case now, but that's what the whole idea of FEMA was supposed to be. This is what the government wanted to do to Laodicea. Because Laodicea was heavily damaged. But what the Laodiceans did showed their arrogance. And we see how much God hates arrogance. For the Laodiceans told the government at that time, we don't need your money. We will rebuild ourselves. Now, some people may say, well, isn't that a wonderful thing? That you have enough resources that you can rebuild yourself. You don't need any help from anyone else. You can build it, make it better, make it stronger, make it longer lasting. That sounds like a good thing, right? That we don't have to lean upon a government. We don't have to lean upon the largesse of people. We can go and rebuild ourselves. We got this. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it then engenders an attitude that is then shared by those who are in the Laodicean church. So you see, this is not about being wishy-washy, what we got from earlier interpretations of what was making the Lord spit you out of his mouth in just total disgust. It wasn't the wishy-washiness, although that's not good either. But it was the arrogance of these people who felt that they did not need anything, not physically, not emotionally, not mentally, and not spiritually. You see how their position essentially led them to their spiritual position, which we're going to talk about the next time we deal with this particular subject. But wanted to let you know why the Lord was so adamant about their distaste, but how he would have to violently spit them out of his mouth. Total rejection of this church. Wow. And again, wow. And the main reason for it is not being unsure where they stood, but of having an arrogance that they don't even need God. They don't even need him. They can do it by themselves. They can get saved by themselves. They can live the life of Christ by themselves. They don't need anyone telling them what to do. They don't need any help. They don't need. But really they do. Not in what they think they have, but in what God tells them what they don't have. And that's what we're going to go over with next time. May God bless you. May he keep you. Thank you for those who are listening. And make sure that you feel as if you need God. We all do. The time that we think that we don't need God is when we fall right flat on our faces. So be careful. May God bless you in Jesus' name.